We want to start at Florida, where, Richard, there's been some injuries there at receiver, maybe 4 to 5 guys at some point during preseason camp. And to me, the big issue is quarterback DJ Lagway that we're expecting a lot out of this year. The quarterback, when healthy last year, was able to play. Florida was almost unbeatable. They only lost one game when he started, right? And so he comes into this year after dealing with an arm injury that back in the spring. Then he gets in preseason camp, and he's being dealt with a leg issue of some sort. So there's some injury concerns, a history, a trend there that might give people pause about Florida as a potential playoff team this year as they continue on the rise. But Richard, what's going on there? Is this, I mean, the quarterback's dealing with issues. We've had receivers dealing with issues. And as we know, you got to get that rhythm going with your receivers. And if guys are coming and going with injuries, that could be an issue when you open the year.
Yeah, Brandon, as far as DJ Lagway is concerned, obviously last year he had the hamstring injury against Georgia. He then had the core muscle injury that he actually had surgery on, and a shoulder injury that he didn't have surgery on, but is something that is lingering. Didn't really throw actively in spring practice, and then got kind of a late start. So now he's at full go, but he had a calf injury earlier in camp that was a minor injury, but it's something that when you stack it all together, you can understand why people are a little bit anxious about just can DJ Lagway hold up health-wise. I spoke to him at SEC Media Days. He says he's all good to go and ready to go. So we'll see how he stays healthy over the course of the season. But his wide receiver room, something of a different story. Trey Wilson, who missed games at the end of last season, had surgery. He has returned to practice in a limited capacity because he had a lower body injury that has hampered him in the early part of this training camp. Florida's still easing him back into things. He's not full go yet, even though he was seen without a non-contact jersey on in the open media portion of practice earlier this week. Florida's also dealing with an injury with freshman Dallas Wilson. He'll be out about another week. He's got a cast around his foot up to his mid-calf. He's a 4-star recruit that I think Florida will be leaning on to be a key contributor in that wide receiver room, which Florida thinks is going to be a strength. They think they're going to have a diverse offense in the building there at Florida. Also, Aiden Mizell, who is a contributor, he is back at practice. He was held out of a scrimmage over the weekend with a soft tissue injury that he'd been dealing with. He's back, and he is, as I understand it, at full go. As far as Trey Wilson and Dallas Wilson are concerned, Billy Napier spoke on Monday. He said he'd call them day-to-day, week-to-week. That's how he would describe it. Day-to-day, week-to-week. Guys, aren't we all?
Yeah, but we're in our 30s. I don't know whether kids who are 19.
I'm in my 40s. How dare you?
Sorry. I didn't realize y'all were
man,
old.
Brandon.
Yeah. No, but I think that my concern, because I expect all these guys will be back and healthy relatively quickly, is, I mean, when you look at DJ Lagway last season, the talent jumped off the page. Like, we know that it's there. It's the consistency that we needed to see, right? I mean, we love him on the deep passes, but it's the, hey, can you be a 65% passer on short to intermediate throws? And now without those guys in the lineup, and not even getting into Lagway himself, I mean, that's my big concern, is not getting to work through some of these reps in camp and not getting to build chemistry with what I agree should be a really talented receiver room. That's something that concerns me. And I mean, look, we've talked at length about the Florida schedule and what it was last year and what it should be this year. They get no time to adjust. Long Island and South Florida in the first 2 games. Then they go number 9 LSU on the road, number 10 Miami on the road, Texas at home at Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and then Georgia. Like, you don't get a whole lot of leeway to necessarily build relationships with players once the bullets start flying. And so I'm a little concerned that ultimately this could end up being not necessarily a long-term injury situation, but a long-term development issue.
Yeah, I mean,
It'd be interesting to watch. Go ahead, John.
No, I'm curious, like, are you guys buying or selling Florida this year? Because I do kind of, to some of the points that Shahan's making, I'm kind of a sell on Florida just because, I love the DJ talent, and I've been a big Billy Napier believer for a long time. Covered him when he was an assistant coach at Alabama. Great guy. I think how he handled the pressure and noise last season was so admirable. But again, you look at their schedule, and I thought he did such a good job just to get to 8-5 a year ago. I think that they're going to be better this year, but are they getting to that 9-10 win mark? Feels hard. So, I mean, I see people, their preseason top 15, friend of the program, Josh Bate, has them top 10. Like, it's hard for me to feel like they're going to get to that level. They feel like a team that's a sell for me right now. But I'm curious what the rest of you guys think.
John, I think
they
Florida
play 7 AP top 25 teams in the preseason, the most in the country, right? That's insane.
Yeah, the schedule thing with all of these teams, I'm like, okay, well, the schedule looked hard last year, and then Ole Miss wasn't that good coming down the stretch, and LSU wasn't that good down the stretch, and Florida beat them, and Florida State went 2-10. So with the schedule thing, I'm like, all right, we'll see how it shakes out. But to me, I think Florida sets up something like a South Carolina team. I think at the end of the season, Florida's kind of ranked in the teens. I think because they're an SEC team, you could probably make a shout about them trying to sneak in the playoff. But I do not think Florida right now is a college football playoff caliber team. I think it's a little too early for them to be that. I do think they could be somebody that could seriously shake up the SEC race. If you upset a Georgia, if you beat an LSU, if you beat a Texas, one of these teams, if Florida can get one of these teams, it makes the SEC championship race seriously interesting. But I don't think Florida is right there to be a playoff team just yet.
No, and I'd agree with that. And I mean, here's the blessing, though, is that because DJ Lagway played so much last year, I mean, you still have another year with him. So when he's heading into 2026, like, I don't think that this is a playoff or bust, for example, type of season at Florida. A lot of their receivers that we just talked about are young. They're still doing a great job of developing in the trenches. That's always how this team wanted to be built, right? Was through the trenches. I think they've done a good job there. Their offensive line last year was kind of the breakout unit that not enough people talked about, led by Jake Slaughter. So, and the other piece of this too is, like, for all how hard the middle of the schedule is, and like you said, we don't know exactly how it's all going to shake out. Things are going to, some team's going to jump up, some team's going to fall down. I mean, they should, frankly, end the year on a 4-game winning streak. Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State. We'll see if any of those teams kind of overperform, but, like, that is very much on the table. So if you steal one from one of the 4 top 10 teams on your schedule, which is crazy, you're in really, really good shape. So I almost feel like it's unfair to... This is one of the reasons why I didn't love that they were ranked top 15, is I feel like it's putting an unfair expectation on them to be something that they're not really being asked to be in 2025.
The problem is Florida fans are asking for everything at Florida. They want everything. They want that playoff spot. That's in that Gator blood. And I've talked to former coaches that go down there, and, like, you win a national championship and the next year you fall just short, and it's like they want you gone. They're questioning every move you're making. You're in the grocery store shopping, and they're asking you about a third down call. It's like that in a lot of programs, but
you're eating
Florida
pizza
is
in the parking lot after a tough loss.
Meanwhile, in the state of Florida, Florida State, they had a defensive back, Conrad Hussey, who you may remember as a true freshman was phenomenal. Really kind of came onto the scene, hampered a little bit, was benched last season. Well, he's no longer with the program there, and it comes on the heels of this past weekend of defensive coordinator Tony White being very disappointed with their second scrimmage of preseason camp and saying, quote, "There's some guys who need to, quite frankly, step their ass up." Well, about a day later, Conrad Hussey was no longer with the program. No reason was given, but my sourcing down in Tallahassee tells me that Conrad Hussey had a physical altercation with a position coach at Florida State, which led to him no longer being with the program. And as one source told me, it wasn't a good look for Conrad Hussey, and it also wasn't a good look for the position coach. And we say all that to say this. You guys have probably seen Mike Norvell this offseason talk a lot about how the attitude, the demeanor of the team last season was not all congealing together. They didn't really want it. He's just come out and said that. They were 2-10. He said we had to go in, kind of rebuild the roster and bring guys in that would buy into our vision. You saw Mike Norvell at ACC Media Days practically yelling, talking about his team, about how they feels like the room is all together. So you can see why things were pretty heated in the preseason camp and practices there at Florida State, and why Tony White was coming out after a scrimmage, just absolutely calling everybody out on that defense. And Mike Norvell wanting this team to be a lot different with their attitude and their demeanor than the team last season. My question, though, for you guys here is Mike Norvell's messaging about that getting across? because it's one thing to say it. It's another thing for the players to buy into it. And I'll add this too. They recruit very well at Florida State. We know that, right? But Conrad Hussey is yet another failure among the blue chip guys, right? I was looking back. The 2023 class, only one of the 9 4-star recruits is a starter on this team. And so Mike Norvell always been criticized about retention and what he does in the transfer portal. And now he's sending out this message about trying to get everybody together. And you're seeing a player leave after a physical altercation. What's going on in Tallahassee, guys? What's your feeling?
Well, Brandon, I would say this is just my guess. This is not a sources thing, but my guess is this is not the first thing that's happened here. This is a straw that broke the camel's back situation, I would imagine, just kind of reading between the lines about how these things usually go. I think your point there is well taken about with Florida State, it is a problem of development. It's a problem of development with high school players. They are not developing high school athletes well enough in Tallahassee. And so you're dealing with the situation where you've got to augment these rosters with transfer portal parts. When it hits, and it's really nice. And you go undefeated and you get shut out of the playoff. But when it misses, as it did last year, it's about as bad of a season that a program like Florida State of Florida State's caliber could ever envision happening. I think it's beyond the pale. You could never imagine Florida State would have a season that poorly. So yeah, the question of development is the one that lingers over this program, Brandon.
We shall see moving forward here this upcoming season. A lot of pressure, a lot of eyes on Florida State after all the changes they made this offseason, not just in the transfer portal, but with the coaching staff as well. Let's talk about a couple of playoff teams last year, maybe quote-unquote surprise playoff teams that maybe not a lot of people were talking about. Some camp intel here. Arizona State and SMU. Arizona State, of course, winning the Big 12 title last year and making it to the playoff. A couple of things I've been hearing from sources out there is that defensive tackle CJ Fight has been a, quote, freak. And they believe that both of their safeties are going to be NFL players next year. Meanwhile, at SMU, they believe they've got the best tight end room in the ACC, and that's hard to argue if they have a healthy RJ Maryland back there. All right, we saw him come onto the scene last season, just a very long, rangy guy, can make incredible catches in traffic. We saw several of those last season. Kind of that hybrid tight end receiver we really like to see in college football these days. He got injured last season, I think in the Duke game, was out for the rest of the way. End up having to have ACL surgery. I'm told that he is back running full speed, running his routes, and now it's just a matter of let's keep him healthy, take it easy on him so we can get into this season healthy. But that tight end room is very, very good at SMU, something to look at there. Now, when it comes to Arizona State and SMU, guys, did we learn anything about, one, how those rosters were built, and also just game day coaching, in-season coaching, that other programs maybe could learn from that are trying to kind of bust through the ceiling and make the playoff? Because Arizona State and SMU definitely haven't been those type of programs in recent years.
Well, and I want to draw us to a comment by Home Squad Sports. Too many teams are coming up short with development. Then they gamble with their portal shopping. I think these are two programs that have done a really good job of managing that piece of things. They've done the high school recruiting and development, right? RJ Maryland is a kid that SMU managed to keep home. He's from DFW. He was a borderline 4-star recruit, and he's turned into one of the best players, I think, in the ACC if he can get healthy. And I think that the same is true with Arizona State. Their first year, they had a crazy portal class, but you actually look at their run to the Big 12 title last year, this was about them having guys who were back for second years with the program, even as transfers. I look at somebody, you mentioned CJ Fight. Xavier Alford is one of those safeties who was back for another year of eligibility at Arizona State. Cam Scadaboo, even last year, was a player with multiple years in that program. And even if you want to talk about running back this year, Raleek Brown was a player who missed all of 2024 with an injury. Well, he's going to benefit from the fact that he's been a part of that program for multiple years. So I think that when you're talking about building a playoff caliber team, especially, by the way, in the ACC, in the Big 12, when you're not a superpower program, this is how you do it. You got to create timelines that make sense for your roster. You can't just, because look, Georgia can be good every year. Ohio State can be good every year. And while you obviously want to be competitive every year, I think that this is a place where these programs can create advantages, is in the development aspect of things. And so I think as a coaching staff, both Kenny Dillingham and Rhett Lashley, two of the younger coaches still in college football, have done a really good job of straddling that line, of making sure that, yes, we get the most talented players that we can, but once they're here, we treat them like they were high school recruited sophomores as well.
Real quick, as we know at BYU, Jake Retzlaff had to leave the program, was facing a 7-game suspension there for violating their policies there, and now is at Tulane. But what is going on with the BYU quarterback battle here real quick, Shahan? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm hearing that Bear Bachmeier, the true freshman who transferred over the summer from Stanford with his brother Tiger, apparently he's been really impressive. He's in a competition right now with Trayson Bourget and McKay Hillstead, two guys who were on the roster last year who have played at the Group of 5 level. But Bear has been really a step ahead of everybody, even though he's still learning this offense new as a true freshman. And the thing that I love to hear about that is that, I mean, I just think that Bear gives him so much more upside as a player. He was a blue chip recruit when he committed to Stanford. He comes from a great football family. People might remember Hank Bachmeier, the great Boise State quarterback of a couple years ago. That's the same family.
I watched him doing an online class during a rain delay between UCF and Boise State while I was sitting in the press box.
Incredible stuff. Yeah, well, that time period was a crazy time period, but I think that if he is the guy, if he has truly separated himself as being somebody who could start week 1, and by the way, we talked about Florida's tough schedule to start. BYU has a great schedule to start for a first-time quarterback. They could easily be 6-0 heading into that game against Utah. It changes the upside. I dropped them from being among my contenders in the Big 12, 1 or 2, to like 8 or 9 after they lost Jake Retzlaff. Not because I thought that Jake Retzlaff is a superstar quarterback, but because he was asked to do so much for that team. If they have upside at that position with a really good running back in LJ Martin, with a really good receiver room with Chase Roberts, and by the way, also his brother Tiger Bachmeier, who's a really good player, it changes a lot and maybe could help elevate BYU back into that contender tier.